How come no one in the opposition brought this up, right?
But
I mean, this is the job of the opposition, is to scrutinize government policy and to point out to flaws.
Okay.
Recently, the Trace Together app and token issue has, in Parliament, this thing has blown up. Why? Because it was mentioned when it was questioned in Parliament about the Trace Together app and the platform being used by the police for tracing people for crimes committed. And suddenly, a lot of people in Singapore have gotten quite upset about this. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
Daisy, you want to say something that I'll jump in?
Well, that's a first. This new season, I can't take it anymore. I've been invited to speak first. Okay, then I will take it up. And I'll just say that for one thing, the way I look at it is, you're right, the word paranoia does come into it because we have enough methods in technology today, whether it is CCTV cameras or whether it is other means of tracking and tracing criminals. Trace Together, though, started for a very specific reason of protecting oneself, but I don't understand if it is a matter of criminals, rapists, terrorists, and if this can help even a tiny little bit to just accelerate the process of finding the person who's done it. How do you tell the victims no? How do you tell their family we can't use this information? So I think you're right about the paranoia. And it's right for netizens, for people to feel that. Because if you promise something, stick to it. So they too have their side, which they are right about. Having said that, really, without Trace Together, also the criminals were getting apprehended. So I think if balanced correctly by the government, there was miscommunication. Having said that, I heard that there is going to be a bill passed the moment Parliament sits in the next round, very specifically mentioning that Trace Together will only be used for very specific purposes.
Okay, so let me give the background here. Can you guys hear me? I can't hear myself very well.
We can hear you.
Can
Yeah.
hear you.
All right. So first of all, I think it's very important to put things into context, is that there is something called the Criminal Procedure Code in Singapore,
Right.
It's the CPC. And the Criminal Procedure Code very clearly has always been around for a very long time. It's outlined what the police can do in the course of investigations, all right?
Yeah.
So when they came out with the Trace Together token, no one thought, oh, hang on a second, this is actually covered by CPC because it is electronic communication. Okay?
Correct.
So basically, no one went and told people, by the way, we're using Trace Together token only for you to check into places, but because of the existing law of CPC, they can use this and investigate. So it's not as if they then decided they're going to add Trace Together to CPC. CPC always covered all electronic communications. It's another example, the Internal Security Act of Singapore.
Correct.
This covers everything. So what people actually were expecting was that the government should remind people of the existing laws when there's a new initiative. So they came out with Trace Together. They have to remind people, oh, by the way, this is covered under electronic communications by the Criminal Procedure Code, you see.
Yeah.
So the problem was not that they went back and said, oh, we're going to renege on our promise to only use Trace Together for contact tracing. It is that they did not remind people of, no one thought about this, and you think about this was only came to light when the PAP MP Chris D'Souza asked this question in Parliament saying, by the way, isn't this covered by CPC too?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So you can then question why didn't the opposition MPs, who are also lawyers, come up with this question, because they should have realized this
Correct.
as well, right?
But Gilbert,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but just trying to tell you that the onus of clarifying these things when you are introducing a new gadget like Trace Together does fall on the government.
Sure. No one's disputing that.
So you talk about
But-
it, you say all these things. In fact, if they had not specifically mentioned that this will only be used for the purposes of COVID, nobody might have even said anything.
Exactly. So this is where I'm going to pop my head in right now and say this. Just in a couple of instances, actually, let me just cite a few. Now, personally speaking, I think it's cool to use a trace together, especially to keep the citizenry safe.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like what Daisy said, if it's, you're going to find terrorists and all that, why not?
Rape?
Sure, go ahead.
Rape?
Sure, any kind of serious crimes, go ahead. I have nothing against that. But sometimes it's the way things are done. You see, when Trace Together first was released, there was a privacy statement. And the privacy statement on the Trace Together website had earlier said that the data would only be used for contact tracing purposes.
Right.
On 4th of January, they changed it. It was updated. They said now, it clarified how the Criminal Procedure Code, as you rightly said, applies to all data under Singapore's jurisdiction.
Yes.
Trace Together data may be used in circumstances where citizen safety and security is or has been affected. The Singapore Police Force is empowered under the CPC to obtain any data, including Trace Together data, for criminal investigation.
Sure.
However, going back again, in June of last year, during a multi-ministry task force press conference, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan emphasized, and he said this, and I quote, Trace Together app running on a device and the data generated are purely for contact tracing.
Right.
Period.
Yes.
So, it is not, I don't think that it is about whether or not, my privacy is being infringed. I don't think so. I think it's, again, boils down to communication.
Sure. But he spoke in Parliament about this. He apologized.
Yeah, he said this.
You know.
Frankly, and I quote him again.
Yeah.
He said, I quote, frankly, and I think members know me well, I'm always very frank. Frankly, I had not thought of the CPC when I spoke earlier. Continuing what he said, and I quote again, after I realized that the CPC applied to this, I did have sleepless nights wondering, should I persuade my colleagues to change the law? But having thought about it, discussed, consulted people both within and outside this house, I have come to the conclusion that right now we are doing well. I think we are still on the right track.
Right.
End quote. Now, you see, when this thing surfaced, and I had my coffee shop talk with a lot of friends in various coffee shops, and they were talking about this kind of hot topic.
Absolutely.
The point that they raised, most of them, was actually, look, you are a minister, and under you there are perm secs and there are all kinds of brainy people working within your respective ministries. You mean no one picked this up?
But Chris...
Well, okay, I throw the same thing also. I agree with you. I think that, how come no one in the opposition brought this up, right?
But
this is the job of the opposition, is to scrutinize government policy and to point out to flaws.
Okay.
Why was it the PAPMP that questioned this?
Now,
in
I want to
Parliament?
This is where I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Why even raise the question? Because it already falls under the CPC.
No, okay, so
it opened a can of worms
right,
unnecessarily.
and that's what I was saying, because
I think that's transparency, though.
You see,
to answer
what
his
happens
question is that that's transparency.
No, correct,
is that you
but-
have to ask this question.
Correct, but the point is, with the kind of reaction that took place, on a different level, my question would be, do the citizens of this country not trust? Because this matter now is about trust. Yeah, we all know that they might have miscommunicated at that time. We know that it should have been brought up. In fact, now we realize, oh my God, why did you even have to bring it up at all?
You see, I disagree with that.
Brought up. No, but once
I think it's
brought up.
important to bring it up.
No, but once brought up, and with the realization that they had to take a step backwards, that's when trust issues start coming up, you see. And that's why the flurry. That's why the...
You know why there's no need for that kind of transparency? Because if we're going to talk about transparency at all, this rule, this law, can I call it a law, the procedure code?
It is,
It is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this law has always been there. And
What's a set of laws?
Before Trace Together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they can actually confiscate all of your electronic
Yes,
devices.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
and they
And
use that.
And
They use
GPS
that.
tracking and all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
on your phones and stuff.
Yeah.
But nobody ever questions that.
Yes.
And nobody sees a need to
Yes.
question it
Yeah.
because it's part of the law.
Yes.
Why even ask?
I think that this is the issue, okay? Because people on the ground were already asking, and people on the ground were already making noise. There is this paranoia about technology,
Correct.
which
And-
will lead us to our next topic that we're going to talk about. But there is paranoia about technology, and the problem is there is so much misunderstanding, misinformation about technology, and people fall into fear because of this ignorance
Absolutely.
about technology.
Absolutely.
You know?
You're going to
And-
talk about the WhatsApp thing now, is it?
Yeah. So
Right,
this is a
right.
good segue into it. You know, I mean, let's just to round off on what we talked about here. I'm glad that they are dealing with it right now. So what they are doing now is they're going back and actually amending part of it to say that it is only under serious crimes that the trace together information will
So
be used.
they're actually
okay?
passing a law
Yes.
which will be formalized, and
Yes.
assurances will be made that the data from the COVID-19 Trace Together contact tracing program
So-
will only be used for criminal investigations which are very, very serious.
Yes.
So do you think
Murder, terrorism, and rape.
So do you guys think that this is the reason why they've held back that they were supposed to launch?
Yes.
This trace together only entry.
But you know,
into
I have to
those
say
places.
that if you look online and you look at some of the ignorant comments there, people are already talking about tracking. They don't, even though it has got no GPS and all of that. So I think that there was already a lot of apprehension and fear
Yeah.
about this. So this additional thing, when the question was asked, just ignited it. You know, it was a fire
Yeah.
that
Trust
that's a
issues
problem.
again.
Yes.
Trust issues.
And I also think paranoia as well.